Originally established as the pivot point of the weekly cycle, the seventh day stood for thousands of years as the seal of the Creator's power and authority. During the lifetime of Jesus Christ, contention and debate raged over the issue of proper Sabbath keeping. In Part 3 of The Seventh Day, Hal Holbrook and experts from around the world chronicled the struggle to replace the seventh-day Sabbath with Sunday as the Christian day of worship. The story is woven into the history of medieval Europe, and it continues to shape the customs of most Christians even today. And now, Part 4 of The Seventh Day, Revelations from the Lost Pages of History.
I am Ivan Krizin. I pray for courage to die a noble death today. I will die for my faith, for the truth that I have loved. I will die because of those things that I have believed and taught according to the Holy Scriptures, both Old Testament and New. I will die today because I have observed the seventh day of the week as the holy Sabbath of God. How did it come to this fiery death? I had such hopes. I had visions of the whole Russian church reforming, reviving the pure truth of the gospel. But now it comes to an end. Ivan III. He could not stay away. Once he was our friend. I wonder what is in his heart today. Look there. Elena and Dmitri, Sobotniks, Sabbath keepers like me. The Tsar's own daughter-in-law. His grandson. What will become of them? Will they burn too? Ah, Sophia. She should be happy today. She was against us from the very beginning. And Gennady, the Archbishop from Novgorod, he has lived for this day, for this fire. He claims that we have turned away from Christ and become like the Jews. But I am a Christian, and I die today for love of Christ and His Word.
Those horrific fires in Moscow 500 years ago signaled the death of the 15th century Russian Reformation, a Reformation characterized by its emphasis on observing Saturday, the seventh day, as the Sabbath. Hello, I'm Hal Holbrook. Welcome to part 4 of the seventh day, Revelations from the Lost Pages of History. The man in the cage, Ivan Kurizin, was a prominent Russian theologian and a leader of the religious uprising that historians call the Novgorod-Moscow movement. The Tsar Ivan the Great found this movement already well established in Novgorod when he seized control of that city around 1480. Ivan found that 2 Russian Orthodox priests were at the heart of the movement. He invited them to Moscow. Dr. Oleg Zhigenkov explains.
The reason Tsar Ivan brought the 2 most prominent priests, Denis and Alexei, from Novgorod to Moscow was that he himself was somehow sympathetic to the reformers' views. And Ivan installed them to be the priests at the 2 most important cathedrals in Moscow, in Russia, in Arkhangelsky Cathedral and at the Armenian cathedrals. Those 2 cathedrals are still the most important cathedrals in Russia.
But the Tsar wasn't the only one who was pro-reform. The Novgorod-Moscow movement reached into the highest levels of government and included people in the Tsar's inner circle. The whole story reads like a great Gothic novel. On the one hand, you've got Elena Stefanovna, widowed daughter-in-law of the Tsar. And she's a Sabotnik. That is, she's a Sabbath keeper. On the other hand, there's the Tsar's wife, actually his second wife, Sophia, a Greek princess by birth. She grew up in Italy under the influence of the Roman Catholic leaders, who hoped that her marriage to the Tsar would pull the Russians closer to the Church of Rome. But Sophia eventually adopted the Russian Orthodox religion. So Tsar Ivan is caught between these 2 women, both of whom have great influence on him and his court. And the 2 of them are on opposite sides of the religious controversy. But the plot thickens. Elena's son, Dmitri, Ivan's grandson, is in line to become the next Tsar. And Dmitri, like his mother, supports the Sabbath-keeping reformers. Now, Sophia, remember, she's the Tsar's second wife, bore him a son named Vasily, and she wants her son to become Tsar after Ivan, and she'll stop at nothing to get her way. Sophia has a powerful ally in Gennady, the Russian Orthodox Archbishop of Novgorod. Gennady is a zealous, even fanatical enemy of the Sabbath-keeping reformers. He calls for extreme measures. Listen to this.
And in some of his letters addressed to the Russian Tsar, Gennady venerates the methods of Spanish Inquisition and insists that the Russian Orthodox Church and the Russian state should apply these methods towards the Russian Subotniks movement.
Russian Orthodox Church leaders met at the Council of Moscow and condemned the reformers as heretics. The sentence of the council details the charges.
Some of you said blasphemy against many holy icons, and some of you cut the holy icons and burned them with fire. And you have all honored the Sabbath more than the resurrection day of Christ.
Now, of course, the resurrection day is Sunday, first day of the week. The council accused these reformers of honoring the seventh day, the Sabbath, more than the first day, Sunday. And that's what united their movement. The Council of Moscow was the beginning of the end for the Novgorod-Moscow movement. It eventually died in the flames of Red Square. Elena Stefanovna and her son Dmitri fell out of favor. Their fate is unclear. Tsar Ivan III died, and Sophia's son Vasily took his place, just what his mother wanted. Early in the 16th century, the Muslim kingdom of Adal attacked the Christian empire of Ethiopia. This was a jihad, a Muslim holy war, backed by the powerful Ottoman Turks. It took over vast areas of the country, overwhelming the Ethiopian forces. In desperation, the emperor appealed to Portugal for aid. Several long and difficult years passed, and finally, in 1541, Portuguese troops arrived on the coast of what is now Eritrea. Cristobal da Gama, son of the famous navigator Vasco da Gama, commanded a band of 400 musketeers. Their mission? Rescue Christian Ethiopia. It was a costly effort. In their first major battle, the Portuguese took heavy casualties. Da Gama himself was captured and beheaded by the Muslim commander. Fortunately, with the help of the surviving Portuguese force, Emperor Gulaudus beat back the invaders in 1543, ending the Muslim threat. But a few years later, a new challenge to Ethiopia's Christianity appeared when Jesuit missionaries followed in the footsteps of the Portuguese troops. Facing privation, captivity, torture, and death, these Jesuits devoted themselves to bringing the Ethiopian Church into the Roman Catholic fold. But there were major differences between the Ethiopian Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches, not the least of which was that the Ethiopians observed the seventh-day Sabbath, a practice that dated back at least 1,000 years. Still, the Jesuit missionaries persisted. Finally, Emperor Susenyos embraced the Roman Catholic Church and professed his allegiance to the Pope. In 1622, he proclaimed Roman Catholicism the official religion of his empire. Afonso Mendez, a Jesuit priest, arrived in Africa as the newly appointed patriarch of the Ethiopian Church. He was eager to stamp out the traditions of the Ethiopian Church, especially Sabbath-keeping. With Mendez urging him on, Emperor Susenyos issued a proclamation requiring his people to work on the Sabbath, a desecration of the holy day. That was a big mistake.
Both the clergy and the people, everybody turned against him. They didn't accept his proclamation. It was only the nobles, the kings, and his subjects in the palace were the only ones who were keeping the Roman faith.
A violent wave of protests swept over the land. The people rebelled. They refused to give up their traditional religion. Susenyos saw his good intentions trigger a bitter civil war. There were thousands of casualties. Amid the chaos and bloodshed came a voice of reason.
Fasilidas, one of his sons, talked to his father, Susenyos, and said, "Look at how many people you have killed. How many are you going to kill again? These people are not pagans, they are not Muslims. They are our people. Some of them are your relatives." And he convinced his father that what he did was wrong. Susenyos passed another edict, finally, and said, "When I accepted the Roman faith, I thought it was good for the people. But now, even the ignorant peasants choose to die to keep their tradition than accepting the new faith. Therefore," he said, "I will step down and give my kingdom to my son Fasilidas. From now on, he said, you are free to worship the way you want. In your churches, in your communities, you are free.
Even today, the observance of the seventh-day Sabbath, together with Sunday, is common in Ethiopia, the nation with the world's longest history of Christian Sabbath keeping. Imagine this. You wake up one morning to the sound of policemen pounding on your door. They handcuff you and throw you into the back of a squad car and haul you off to jail without telling you why. They confiscate all your belongings and seize your life savings. You spend months in a lonely cell, wondering why you're there. Now and then the guards take you to be questioned by detectives. But it's a strange kind of interrogation. They want you to tell them why you've been arrested. They say there are 7 or 8 witnesses against you, but they won't say who they are. They want you to guess that too. Sometimes they torture you. You try to think of who it was that accused you of whatever crime you're supposed to have committed. And then you begin to name names, hoping to hit on the right ones. Sometimes they promise to let you go, but only if you cooperate. So eventually, you begin to make things up, to confess the things you've never done, hoping to satisfy them. After a year or so, they take you to a courtroom with several other prisoners. A judge is reading out the sentences. Some prisoners are getting off easy. Others are getting life in prison. Some are getting the death penalty. What will you get? Maybe that scenario gives you at least an inkling of what it was like to live in the grip of the infamous Inquisition, a diabolical scheme for identifying and eliminating religious dissent.
The Inquisition in Europe in the Middle Ages had its own rationale, its own justification. The first justification was that this life is so much less important than the life to come, and that therefore, if a person's earthly life was taken away for the sake of his or her immortal soul, you were doing a favor to that person. However, it has to be said that the other rationale of the Inquisition was not so much to sentence people to death, through burning usually, but to reclaim the person, to persuade them to return to the bosom of Holy Mother the Church.
Pope Gregory IX established the medieval Inquisition back in 1231 to protect the Catholic world from heretics and religious rebels. The Inquisition was a highly organized operation, combining the powers of both church and state. It was a devastating weapon. Simply put, it got results. In 1469, the marriage of Ferdinand and Isabella merged the kingdoms of Aragon and Castile into the United Kingdom of Spain. By the way, this is the same Ferdinand and Isabella who sent Christopher Columbus on his voyage of discovery in 1492. The new king and queen were militantly Catholic. In fact, they are called the Catholic monarchs. But they had to face the fact that their Spain was not as Catholic as they wanted it to be. You see, a generation or two earlier, the Jews of Spain had been compelled to convert to Catholicism under threat of deportation and loss of possessions. Now, these forced converts were called New Christians, and the title stuck. They were baptized Roman Catholics, but some of them, perhaps many of them, retained some traditional Jewish customs, like observing the seventh day, Saturday, as the Sabbath. Queen Isabella saw this as a serious desecration of the true Catholic religion. So in 1478, she persuaded the Pope to authorize the Spanish Inquisition. She wanted to purge her church of any taint of Jewish heresy.
The Inquisition in Spain and Portugal devoted a great deal of its energy and its attention to wheedling out these people, to detecting these people who on the face of it were Roman Catholics, but who were in fact still clinging on to their Judaism.
Some of the new Christians followed the Jewish custom of lighting a special candle before sunset Friday evening. That's when the Sabbath began, according to the Old Testament. In the eyes of the inquisitors, this lighting of Sabbath candles was damning evidence. The power of the Inquisition was subtle and insidious. The inquisitors urged people to spy on their friends, their neighbors, even members of their own families. They used threats and torture to coerce people to give evidence they needed. Hardcore heretics and repeat offenders faced the most extreme measures. They were turned over to the secular authorities for punishment. Some were burned in effigy. Others were burned at the stake, in person. The Spanish Inquisition spread its net wide and drew in others besides converted Jews. The Roman Catholic Church also included ex-Muslims. The inquisitors suspected them of secretly practicing Islam. And of course, Spain had to be protected from a storm of religious controversy that was brewing in the rest of Europe. That, too, was the business of the Inquisition.
I am Constantino. Oh God, can you hear me? Are there no cruel pagans? No bloodthirsty cannibals worse than ravaging beasts to whom you could deliver me, that I might escape these inhuman barbarians who keep me in this pit? Why am I here? Because of truth? Because of the Sabbath? I have loved your word. I have taught it faithfully. Am I to die here? In this hall?
Dr. Constantino Ponce de la Fuente was an immensely popular preacher and a gifted writer. He had traveled throughout much of Europe as chaplain to the imperial court. His peers held him in such high regard that he was elected magisterial canon of the Cathedral of Seville. Huge Gothic structure that to this day ranks the largest cathedral in the world. When Constantino preached, great crowds would pack the place to hear his sermon. Dr. Constantino was a reformer, particularly his role play in Spanish. It was here that Constantino adopted some Catholic views while holding the highest office in the great cathedral. He, along with his friends, what he called the Christian Church, believed Christians would obey the commandments. Obedience possible work of God in the Christians. In his opinion, the seventh
human God appointed offered to him high by other man for who created it.
Under the newly society of Jesus became Fisher, during his sermons. The ancient he called him in his teachings. His friends told them, they want me to, but they found that I still didn't. Officer of the Inquisition finally arrested him in August of 1858. Being prison just outside, cut off from his friends and supporters, from the crowd used to fill when his last death. No crowd in February, the victim of the Spanish Inquisition. Spain giving port also salute problem. The Inquisition began in 6. finally end well into the 300 years of Mark speak record long process of meticulous cuts document the human tragedies, short, cold stories. One of this Inquisition darkest was written far to the east in India. You might was it get there? Let me tell you. At the end of the 15th century, Vasco sailed around the South Africa and on to India, up the Atlantic coast all the way to the Orient. Portuguese quickly laid claim to key parts of India. It was a new world of opportunity. Many Christians immigrated there, hoping to find a new life beyond the reach of the English.
The converts, or more properly Portuguese, started living in Portugal, going to India, especially in the 30 and 40 of the 15th, primarily for religions.
In 1542, Francis Xavier, one of the original Jesuit missionaries, arrived in Goa, on the coast of India. His evangelized people east in the Roman Catholic population.
Francis Xavier, a letter to his fellow priests, Jesuits, stated musicians should be established in the East, because there were some people to be Catholics, in reality, or Muslims.
Javier died in 15, but his appearance in Inquisition in the East did not die with him. In 1560, the Portuguese Inquisition came to India, entered in Goa, specifically targeted Christians who refused to work on Saturday, serving on Friday evening as taught in the Bible.
Indeed, those being accused were some people in the had no roots to observe for society.
It may be that the keepers who had no roots in India, evidence of the local Indian Christians had observed this for 100 years. Sabbath times date to the very first Christian churches in India. These people Catholic, nor could they be Christian. This didn't protect them from the long Inquisition of Goa.
Charles death, a physician and citizen of closely tained the crimes of my enemies. Yet I have despaired, display. I have killed. I do more. What? I hadn't fist again. That more. At least one of the new Christian. They really are. And I not free. For I just my end. Uncertain.
We know Jones spit out about it in detail. Accused of all offenses, all for trial. His judges released him from India and sentenced him to 5 years as a slave in the shipyard of Lisbon. He was more fortunate than friends from defeat on his behalf. Won an early release from prison general. In 1677, he returned to France. He began to write there, victim of the Inquisition. In his accounts that burned the stake for Julia, not all, but kept the same.
And prepare them to be as Jews, their wife, who their sex against they are Christians, and have been so during life.
1880, Charles Delon of the ink groups the gazing position, the viewpoint of a. You can check it out yourself. A preacher. The Christian world. See if you change it. Sure. Had started a fire. One out. You know what? I made new religious sacred.
Luke can be the other way to set the Bible was translated vernacular so that common could read scriptures and fit.
For Martin Luther's Bible was the truth benchmark of script.
Luther is the soul for faith. Or we is the standard. Probably be Reformation
result we turned up which said controlled account says about John Alley is what Orient's war.
This is 2054, and he was of a couple. He made maybe on his part, but not with some virgin.
Pope the only one. The France opposed strictly. Eventually, the King of England again. Pressure counted in 5 years trapped to this friend at the Alps and period the constant
the first issue that we might see that all church traditions.
Yes, for first position, Protestant reject.
They try to overthrow the authority church. The nation church authority church going to the script and blame difficult stand.
On to say that came this hello
this of the church bearing and of peace down in the dish in the and in the traditions back to the so
planning that the church that suit or interpret mind, but they can do priest and bishop these Christians and becomes interpreter.
Still rates the customs.
Either doesn't that on the or for instance in back where do you stab not where we had nerves see to know that they're not but people of tradition other people to
to the bishop was
today the pride the
for baptism
in the very beginning in 20 and Protestant started the threat state.
These said that standing over and they taught when men could utter both with need for and the and the church and the different
Baptist attack true on the of Christ and the gospel of church.
modern forward this move.
Both could and not for was had
specifically Tibet. Would and study the Bible.
Here, keeping has a double. God, we must and pray to receive. Other Christ.
Of is more in passing
through the Bible was irrelevant. As a Christ contact and early invent and and preacher Oslate as Fisher.
They on with the Saturday ship.
This was here logical law. Law obey. There are 8 commandments. Say that gotten and they taught the Victor the Sunday. Was imprisoned. They ran you for just
20 and his wine with it who so done sword the one and on
fish. Salt. You see, hours. It's how happened. It is so.
As an
and correct pork slow it. Days, but Russia, outside in a century. Bye.
When the church they in more in their scrubs that do
The church, the some the four and uphill volume. See English strict. Okay. Because the Lord for not a few ever for that there's a amen. Description before command the seventh a war God zealot 7 upon
it is hope shining
of issue and the Amendment.
They man but
in 60 Ham that issue greatest in time hope to verse Sabbath.
From this and day
The suspension. She did so.
Position at the meal and at all hundreds did man Harlem expectation to and a half bar per
Back in soul. Yes. But a thing of the fun.
$100 and a for builder fake his isn't keeping cell and should of the sets. I'm afraid mine. Lord.
Shall wear
Peter. The and fear Sab see it